The voice of Husker Nation is on the air. This is Hail Varsity Radio. Insight, opinion, expertise, along with the biggest names talking Nebraska sports. Join in with the show at 402-489-1240 or 1-800-825-5865. Now, here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel.
Welcome to it. Great to be with you on a Monday. It's Hail Varsity. We're powered by Cornhead Lager. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. Hope you're doing okay. Shout outs to you, Brennan from the Black Hills. It is wedding week, my good friend. Wish we could be up there for you. We're headed off to the CWS Friday and throughout much of next week. We'll get the shout-outs in the StreamYard going. Hope your weekend was good. Numbers to get in, 489-1240, 489-1240, 800-825-5865. Can email Chris at hailvarsity.com. And always find the show, the podcast on your timeline, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play with Hail Varsity Radio. Hail Varsity YouTube channel can watch the show streamed that way on YouTube, and also watch on the Hail Varsity Radio Twitter handle at HVarsity Radio, at Herbal Essence for Elijah, and at Schmidt_radio for me, Chris Schmidt. Elijah, how you doing? Good weekend? You look relaxed. You look rested. You had some times, it looks like, this weekend, man.
Yeah, I was talking with you briefly before the show, asking how you golfed, because I knew you'd have to get out with the weather this weekend. It sounds like you did.
Good front nine on Saturday. I didn't help my team yesterday. Had a great time Sunday, and had a good time. My buddy Nitro, my dear friend Nate Dickerson up in Omaha, came down. We played on Saturday. Nudged him out in the front nine and got absolutely obliterated on golf score wise on the back nine. And it was fun though. Went and had a big old pizza at Lazari's afterwards, and we're good to go. So, yeah, went to bed early. I am in full old man mode. Friday, Saturday, Sunday. My bedtime's 10. Call me a wuss. It is what it is. But I was good. You were having a good time. Lake party.
Yeah. I was briefly telling you about this before the show. So on Saturday, so Saturday following our show, I get home, mow the line, get a text, hey, it's from my buddy Sam. He's like, hey, I'm hanging out up at the lake today. Come out, bring your roommate, and come out and let's have a little lake day for ourselves. Little did I know, until I arrived, I walked in to the Beer Olympics. It had already started, so I wasn't on a team. I did still get many beers and many cornhole games and beer pong games and all of those.
You had a good time.
Had a good time for myself. But yeah, that was, I don't think I was mentally prepared. Whenever I pull up, I'm like, why are there 50 cars here? I was walking to 75 people playing a whole bunch of drinking party games.
Was it represented with different folks that had their own neighborhood flags, much like the opening ceremonies of your normal Olympics? You'll see different teams from different countries parade around the track with their flag. Was it like that?
Similar, but with
bed
costumes.
sheets?
It was costumes. We had a
what kind of costumes are we talking?
We had a team in Lederhosen.
Oh, no.
We had a French-themed team.
Nobody in chaps and leather.
No, thank goodness. Going dodgeball with it. I think we got the wrong costumes.
What kind of parties Elijah going to?
No, but it was a very good time. People from surrounding lake houses showed up with their little teams.
Oh, no.
Met an individual who works at the bar, so he was friends with Seth and Gregors.
Awesome.
Good to see him. My roommate was making the rounds. See, I was driving, so I got to enjoy myself for like maybe 90 minutes, and then there was like that 3-hour cool down period of like, okay, now it's time to be responsible.
Focus up.
My roommate, who shall not be named at this time, he didn't have to engage in the cool down period, and I like lost him for like an hour, and I get back to him like, what happened to you in the last hour?
Was he commandeered?
He was not commandeered. You started crushing him apparently while I was away. Because he went down like he's like skipping stones in the lake. I'm like, what are you doing, man? And he just started crushing beers apparently. So that was a fun ride home.
I bet. Did you just duct tape him and throw him in the back seat?
I wanted to.
Oh, he was in that rare form. So a buddy you bumped into there, was this dude getting numbers?
From mothers, potentially.
From moms?
From mothers, potentially.
That is incredible.
I wasn't going to expose this unnamed individual.
Well, yeah, we won't. We will keep him unnamed. But you're at a lake party. It's the Beer Olympics, and we talking 35-year-olds, 45-year-olds, 60-year-olds, 55-year-olds?
I would never try to guess the age of a grown woman. I've been told by my parents that's impolite. Therefore, I will not.
Was there any work done?
What do you mean?
Like, you can tell if there's, Botox Academy going on.
I stay away from that. I stay away from those
That
discussions.
made you uncomfortable.
I stay away from those discussions.
You want to be invited back for the next Olympics.
There were some listeners there, so I'm not going to say too much.
Oh, man. Let's get our shout-outs going. The StreamYard alive and well. Mike is in. Mike, good to have you. We shouted out Brennan. Brennan, we want wedding pics. Send them our way, Big Cat. We're excited for you this weekend. We're sending him stuff, aren't we?
We need to get on that, don't we?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We Brandon, we have a whole bunch of stuff we've picked out. We just need to get it shipped. Promise. Crew in at third. Cliff, good to have you, Cliff. You're in from Florida. Patrick is 5. Matthew in 6. The other Dave, 7th. Savage McQueen. And honorable mention, Savage, you're in that first rotation. Good work, good sir. Jimmy is in. Justin, good to have you. Crazy Spider Adventures. Howdy Cornheads is what he says. Says, hey, Uncle Jim. Mark is in. Elijah and Chris, of course, bring us the cinnamon roll scented Husker news we crave. We will get into recruiting, Mark, in 2 seconds. Ryan is in, ready to roll. NASCAR Eric, good to have you. Chris is in. Scott is here. The real Matthew says, Nitro, were you with an American Gladiator? Dickerson, back in his day, could have won quite a few American Gladiator events. I will say that. Justin, we've got this to talk about with Adrian Martinez, the UFL MVP. Good for him. That is incredible. The real Matthews asking, was Will Wilson with you this weekend?
No, he was not.
Okay.
No.
Will was working, probably.
And if he was with me, I wouldn't say any names still. But I can confirm it was not Will with me.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what did the wise old mafia fox, Robert De Niro, Jimmy the Gent Conway, say to Henry as soon as he got pinched? 2 most important things in your life: always keep your mouth shut, never rat on your friends.
La Cosa Nostra.
The second most important part. Let's get into recruiting. Big weekend for Nebraska. Huskers getting a talented in-state linebacker, tight end Pierce Newberry out of Millard North. We're going to talk to Brandon Kinney tomorrow, former Husker wideout, and get his take because he's on the staff there at Millard North. But Pierce is a guy that has had offers from some programs that do it right. They've identified linebackers pretty well, and that's the Minnesotas of the world, the Wisconsins of the world, with Newberry, and Nebraska able to keep in-state talent home. That's critical. That's key. And from a historical standpoint, Kansas State also in Kansas. So Coach Leipold, Coach Kleinman, PJ, those guys really liked what Newberry can do. And the thing about him is his speed, his athleticism, his agility, but also his toughness. You have that athleticism in Newberry, and we had a chance, Elijah, I think we saw Millard North last year, probably an 8 o'clock kick at Seacrest, and I know Millard North just started feeding him the ball on offense at tight end, and tight ends with the wing-bone offense for Millard North were always just deadly. They were great down the seam, and man, they were big and they could run people over. So this is a guy in Pierce that was identified by Nebraska. They worked to get his commitment, and now there's 3 more in-state guys on the board. That's Lofton, that's Jones, that's Ziebert. But you got another Nebraska kid to stay home, and you like what he can do. I've said, versatility 100 times already, but that's really truly what it is to me about him. Can he play both sides of the football? Yeah, Nebraska can identify where he fits best, but I think they like him for sure at linebacker. And in this defense, you want guys that can move and can cover, but can also get into the mix on the line of scrimmage, make some splash plays. The TFL is always important in Tony White's defense, and you want linebackers that can fight off enough blocks or just be fast enough to get to a spot and take care of a ball carrier.
And I see him as that 2-point stance, like outside linebacker that is up on the line of scrimmage, the kind of role we saw from Prince Will. I think we saw it at times from Jamari Butler last year. That guy that has some athleticism to get out in space and cover if necessary and can also get after the passer. You don't necessarily look at them as a run-stuffing type. Yeah, they can get their nose in there. Mm-hmm. That's kind of where I almost foresee him fitting in here. I mean, it's a 500-mile radius kid, so you don't want to lose out on that. But you already have a tight end in the class in Bear Tenney. And it makes me wonder, is that Mooberry's spot to go at tight end? I know there's been a lot of recruiting folks that see him more as a defensive end as much as he plays tight end at the high school level.
I think it's defense
They
first.
project him up to that defensive end, outside linebacker, 2-point stance kind of guy. That's kind of where I see him fitting in as well. We'll get Tim Verghese's take here in about 10 minutes on where he sees Mooberry fitting in. But he fits that role of an athlete well, not necessarily an all-over-the-field type athlete, but the question I think once he gets on campus is, do you want to play him on the offensive side of the ball or the defensive side of the ball? And if I had to guess, I think they'd probably try him on the defensive side of the ball first with the athleticism and how loaded your tight end room already is.
So that was the good news of the weekend. The bad news of the weekend, if you're a Nebraska recruiting fan, is the reality. Michigan did Michigan things, and they land really high-level defensive tackle in Jalen Williams, 4-star kid out of Palatine, Illinois. Nebraska made his Final Four. Nebraska scheduled to have what would have been the final visit from Williams, but he did his visit with Michigan over the weekend. Tim Verghese, also so a lot of the other services tweeting out this commitment, and it came down probably about 3:15, 3:20 Central Time. So you had Jalen Williams commit to Michigan then. Good pursuit by Nebraska. We'll talk to Jay Moore here in hour 2, along with Charlie McBride, our Blackshirt Hour, get their takes on just losing out on such a high-profile guy. And beer being half full, listen, you're 5-7, and you're going to be in the thick of it because you've landed a Raiola. You work hard to always recruit, not only Coach Rule, but his staff, and do a really nice job of connecting with people. But the next step is to start going wow on the field. And I think everybody knows that. Once you get some more wow wins, you have a wow season, maybe some of these recruiting battles that you're in the thick of it with go the other way.
And this was sort of expected to lay it out. We asked the question both to Tim and to Greg last week because there was kind of momentum towards Michigan. As soon as he moved that visit up, it was the notion was kind of like if he goes and sees what he expects to see on this Michigan visit, it might be over in this recruitment. Turns out it was. Apparently he saw what he wanted to see at Michigan. And I don't want to say it feels like a gut punch, but Nebraska never really felt like they were in the lead or in that top 2 with Jalen Williams.
They were in contention.
They were in contention. Yeah. They were in the thick of things. Like you look at some of the other 5-stars, Michael Terry, it feels like Nebraska's high on the list there. I know they're in the Final Four, but I think they're even more in the thick of that one than they ever were with Jalen Williams.
Think they didn't even have to pull out Lamborghini Row to do it.
And I might even say the same about David Sanders with that Raiola connection. Those two have been talking and kind of peer recruiting each other for a while now. I think Nebraska might be more in the thick of it than Jalen Williams. It was always Nebraska a little bit behind the 8 ball with Jalen Williams, and it's not necessarily a surprise. A little bit of a disappointment. I think 6 months ago, Nebraska was in a better spot than they have been over the past 2 months or so. That recruitment has definitely shifted other places. That being said, you don't like it We'll see if he does ever end up making it to Nebraska. He hasn't officially announced whether he's canceled his visits or not. It's being reported he's not going to make any of his summer official visits, but we know in the world of recruiting, things can change between June and August or September. We'll see if he ever makes it to Lincoln. Not a bad thing for Nebraska to be in contention. They lose out, but they have other defensive line prospects they're talking to, and they really like. The number one guy I think of is Michael Riles. They've been hot and heavy on Michael. He's a defensive lineman from down in Port Arthur, Texas. It's a name you think about as potentially being a guy that doesn't necessarily fill the Jalen Williams shoes, because Jalen Williams has some big shoes, both literally and figuratively, in terms of what his recruiting profile is. But I think Nebraska's got, I guess, backup options along the defensive line. It's not a gut punch that it could be whenever you look at some of these big fish they are trying to swing at.
It's not like you were it's not like you finished second.
I think you finished fourth out of his top four.
Possibly, but you got in, and you'll keep chopping wood. We have our first Ask Charlie question. Some of those come in via email or the stream. For Coach McBride, Cliff wants to know, he wants us to ask Coach McBride if he actually threw his teeth at Christian Peter for missing class. So I haven't talked to Christian or Jason in a while, but I didn't ever dare ask Christian, yeah, dude, how many times did you miss class? I mean, this not something that came up. But Cliff, I'll ask for you later. I'll put that down. Listener Cliff wants to know, Uncle Charlie did, ... Scott says Tyson Terry is going to be a good D-line addition. Absolutely, in-state kid. We'll talk with Tim Verghese next on Hail Varsity.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Thanks for hanging out. It's Hail Varsity on a Monday, powered by Cornhead Lager, Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. Tim Verghese with us, Inside Nebraska, Rivals.com. Tim, good to have you. Thanks for a few minutes. How are we doing?
Not too bad. Need a haircut. I'm just realizing that now.
You keep that flow going, dude. You're good.
I mean, during recruiting season, who has time for a haircut? It's got to be your busiest time of the year, right?
Oh yeah, no, that's the part of it too. I don't know when I'm going to fit in that hour haircut in these next couple of weeks. So just have to wait till July.
You'll put it off. I like it. At Tim Verghese on Twitter's where you follow him. So what are your thoughts here of this first session of Friday Night Lights and some of the campers into the weekend? Kind of a broad, general question to open up, but what are some of your what's the feedback been like? What were your thoughts?
So we were there Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Me and Steve Merrick, also at Inside Nebraska, just in the stands hanging out, watching the camps. I kind of mentioned it last week. This was more of just an evaluation time for the staff for future classes, less than 2025s. We saw a handful of 2025 offers go out, two technically go out, and both of those offers I think are guys that they are either next in line on their board or guys that they think can turn around and get committed pretty fast. So they're not really bringing in like last year, not bringing in some of these top rising seniors. It's more of trying to get an early evals on 26s, 27s, and we saw a new 2028 QB offer go out. So that's just kind of where they're at with the process right now.
Tim, among those 2026, 2027 guys, who are some names that stood out to you past your eye test, some guys that got some Husker offers?
Yeah, big one was, again, just a testament to the kid, Asa Mina, 2028 quarterback out of Bishop Gorman, was an immediate eye catcher just in that QB group. They split the QBs off into 4 different groups, and it was clear there was one group of upperclassmen that Glenn Thomas was paying close attention to. In that group, there was one short quarterback wearing a gray jersey, which gray indicates much, much younger, like 2028 or even 2029. So we knew he was young, but Glenn Thomas was paying really close attention to him. He was throwing consistently the best ball in the Saturday session, just was hitting with consistent timing, consistent velocity, consistent accuracy, good footwork, just has to grow. Again, he's an 8th grader going into 9th grade. You just got to grow. But really a lot to like with him early on. Like what I saw from him, offensive lineman Deacon Schmidt looked really good. Really like what we saw from him. That was a guy that we weren't surprised got an offer at the end of camp. He was working with Mason Bandhauer out of Fort Collins, offensive lineman that Nebraska's already offered. One of the few guys that Nebraska has already offered that also decided to camp. Just wanted to come in, get some work with Donovan Raiola. So it was good to see those two not just come down and camp, but like come down and earn that offer. Another one that I personally thought was really impressive, 2025 Columbus Beechcroft athlete Tyler Russell. That was one of the few 2025 offers they made. He worked out across 2 days. He worked out at running back, he worked out at wide receiver, and he worked out at cornerback. Just got a lot of work in, got a lot of coaching from Coach Bartell, Coach McGuire, Coach Cooper. And Nebraska kind of looking at him as a DB. Of those three, they kind of like most a DB. But he's already planning. He's got some family in Lincoln. He's already planning to return for an official visit. Nebraska was his first P4 offer. This is one that could move pretty fast for Nebraska.
One of the things I saw with Tyra Russell, I thought it was interesting. I think he's from the Columbus, Ohio area, if I remember correctly. The picture he posted up was Cam Taylor-Britt, who he knows in Cincinnati nearby right now. And also the game that picture was from Ohio State, had the caption #ProveHimWrong. Am I reading too deeply into that? Maybe a kid with a chip on his shoulder being from the Columbus area, not getting a look from Ohio State?
Very much a chip on her shoulder. I don't even think it's personally about Ohio State. I just think the kid thinks he's underlooked, and he's right to think so. You turn on the tape, you look at the track times. That's a guy that should have more offers. And since Nebraska offered, he's got Michigan State interested in him now. Indiana's interested in him now. Maryland's interested in him now. Rutgers, like a couple of Big Ten programs, in the mix for him now.
Tim, how many programs do you see latch on to offers as soon as Nebraska makes the offer or hits send? What's the response rate like? And I'm not saying that Michigan State or Rutgers doesn't do their own homework, or Maryland, but if they're good enough for Nebraska, they're good enough for ... Have you seen that?
Yeah, and you start to see some of these trends, for a lot of guys that are really under recruited, oftentimes their first two P4 offers are Nebraska and Texas Tech. Just those two staffs do a really good job of evaluating, so you'll often see those two in first. Michigan State, to their credit, since this new staff has gotten there, they're doing a really good job of evaluating and making some fresh new offers themselves. We've seen Nebraska follow Michigan State, but at the same time, Michigan State's also following Nebraska too, offering some guys. That's something that I think Matt Rule and his staff didn't necessarily have to navigate at previous stops. At Baylor and Temple, it wasn't as big of a deal when a Baylor offer came in or when a Temple offer came in. But something they haven't really navigated is they offer this, this player that doesn't have any offers or is relatively underlooked. And then all of a sudden, like 10, 15 Power 5 schools are also looking at him after Nebraska offers. That just isn't something they've had to deal with in the past. So I'm curious how they navigate that in the future. Moonbot
chimes in and says, I hate that crap. They just use our recruiting department. Do you think the coaching staff feels any annoyance there? Or what do you think the reaction of the coaching staff is? Because it is kind of a sign of respect when you get down to it. Whenever you say, hey, Nebraska offered this kid, we should send him an offer too. It is a sign of respect, but I could also see annoyance entering the picture there as well.
For sure. I think it's a mix of both. Like you say, Nebraska does take a lot of pride in their evals, and they take a lot of pride in being first. And, being first does matter a lot to these guys. Like for Tyrell, we were talking about it, and he was like, no matter what happens from here, Nebraska was the first P4 school to offer. Like that does have an impact. I also think Nebraska believes in their abilities to build and maintain relationships. They're really confident in that ability to build authentic, genuine relationships. And regardless of who they're recruiting, they think they're going to be in it till the end because of the authentic relationships they build. So they're not really worried about what other schools do.
Tim Verghese with us, Inside Nebraska, Rivals.com, at Tim Verghese on Twitter. Wanted to get your reaction and some of the upside to Pierce Mooberry, another in-state kid, linebacker, tight end out of Millard North. What are your thoughts on Nebraska getting another local kid in the boat?
Yeah, a big one. I think a recruiting win that may go understated. This was one that Nebraska felt good about for most of this recruitment, but it wasn't necessarily like a done deal. Minnesota really wanted him. Kansas State really wanted him. Iowa State, Kansas all really wanted him. He had some big time offers, or some of these offers, and these schools are really pushing. And these are schools that know how to recruit linebackers, know how to develop linebackers, had a plan in place for him. And, you compare that to where Nebraska, he is kind of seen, at least in publicly, like as a lower tier on that linebacker board compared to like Christian Jones and Dawson Merritt. But he was a very important target for Rob Dvoracek, a very important win. You know, this weekend he was actually supposed to be on his Minnesota official visit. He instead committed to Nebraska, which is a nice little win for the Huskers over, you know, a team that they've gone back and forth with the last few years. As far as the player, again, high upside, 6'4", 200 pounds. He's going to need some time in the weight room to add some weight. But you look at his tape, he's played all over the place. He's played defensive end, he's played linebacker, he's played safety. Long term, I think he fits best at linebacker, just moves really well in space, can cover like bigger tight ends, can cover bigger receivers, can cover running backs if he needs to. You watch him hit, you know, that's a guy that, again, like I said, needs to add some weight. But, you know, against Nebraska level competition, you know, he's hitting guys and they're going backwards. There's no there's no need to foot drive or anything. He's just got that natural power that sends guys backwards. Rangy linebacker. I think someone on our board put it best. I think the best like on Nebraska comp, you know, if you're thinking about current players on Nebraska's rosters, like Javen Wright, you know, a guy that may take a year or two in the weight room, needs some time to develop, but could come on really strong in that linebacker rotation down the line.
It's Tim Verghese with us here talking some recruiting on Hail Varsity Radio. You can find him, follow him on Twitter at Tim Verghese. And Tim, let's flip gears here and talk Jalen Williams. Not necessarily a surprise. There was a lot of momentum last week that Michigan was probably the leader whenever he moved that visit up, and even some thoughts that if he saw what he expected on that Michigan visit, his recruitment might have been wrapping up pretty shortly after. Turns out to be true. He commits to Michigan today. Your reaction to that one? Nebraska was in the thick of things until the end, but they come up short.
Yeah, tough one for Nebraska. You know, this is one that Michigan led for a really long time here, but because of the way Michigan, like Jim Harbaugh leaving, and then the defensive line coach leaving with him, and then the guy they brought in, Greg Scruggs, had a DUI, so he got essentially fired. So they had 3 defensive line coaches this spring. All that turnover actually did lead to Michigan fading a bit, which opened the door for Tennessee and Nebraska specifically to gain some real momentum. So there was a point in the spring where it felt like all 3 were even, or this felt like an open recruitment. Over the last month or so, Michigan's new D-line coach, Lou Esposito, really put the pressure on Williams. They stopped by his school. You know, he came out for the official visit, and that kind of just put them over the top, kind of sealed the deal there. Again, a tough one for Nebraska, but Nebraska kind of understood this was a long shot. You saw some new D-line offers go out in the last couple of weeks or so, kind of an indication of where they see things going, not just with him, but a couple other defensive line targets. You know, guys are making official visits everywhere. I just put it up on our message board. Bukaid Peterzak out of North Dakota, he made an official visit to Oklahoma over the weekend. Sounds like things are trending really quickly, that he might, you know, end up in that class sooner rather than later. And Jaden Lofton, it was a recent edge offer from New Jersey. He made an official visit to Tennessee over the weekend. I've talked to some sources over there. It sounds like things are moving quick between Tennessee and Lofton, but Penn State and Nebraska are both scheduled to get him on official visits soon. Quickly
here, Tim, a name I circled in the first segment as another defensive line option, Michael Riles. Any update on where he stands, defensive lineman out of Texas?
Yeah, there's 2 defensive linemen out of Texas they're going to have on official visits, 2 recent kind of offers. Michael Riles they'll have on the 21st, and Malcolm Simpson they'll actually bring in June 14th this weekend. I put it up on the board. We'll say the same thing here. I think Nebraska and Malcolm Simpson are really starting to love each other. They've really, you know, kind of fallen in love with each other over this last month. Tyson Terry's doing some work there. Tyson Terry's doing some peer recruiting work with Simpson. That's a guy that he kind of fell in love with after watching the film. So they've been talking. Depending on how this weekend visit goes, I could see that moving quick for Nebraska. Riles is still open. I would be wary of UCF and Oklahoma State there. UCF, he's got some really close ties. Cam Martin grew up in the Port Arthur area, was a star running back there, went to Auburn and is now coaching running backs at UCF, but he's close with Riles and his family. So I'd keep an eye on UCF. I'd keep an eye on Oklahoma State. But Nebraska's got a really good chance when they host him to kind of blow him away and potentially put themselves over the top there.
Tim, I need a couple minutes on the other side. Can I do that with you?
Yes, of course.
All right. Tim Verghese, Inside Nebraska, Rivals.com. Some more names we'll get to. Big visit weekend for the Big Red, big month for Nebraska. Hail Varsity continues. We're powered by Cornhead Lager.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
So Elijah in the stream, the other Elijah, as he's known, wants Tim to have his own open. We will converse and huddle with Tim Verghese, Inside Nebraska. and get his thumbs up on that, and we'll work on that.
Yeah, we got to get like movie suggestions or maybe songs, artists. We'll see.
We'll get Tim's thoughts. Tim, I need your thoughts. Midweek visit for Douglas Utu, Bishop Gorman, 2025 talent, top 4 interior offensive lineman. Another close race between Nebraska and Michigan, Washington, and Bama. Great company again. What's your thoughts? What are you hearing about Utu and a couple of other kids that Nebraska's already had on officials from Bishop Gorman? Really good offensive line, clearly at one of the nation's top high schools.
Oh, yeah. Probably going to be the best offensive line in the country this year. 1 5-star talent, 2 high 4-star talents, the number 1 center in the country. It's going to be a ridiculously good offensive line this year. Still working to get some word officially from Utu. He went straight from the Nebraska visit on Friday to Bama, spent the weekend at Bama for his official visit there. So he's just getting home today, kind of settling down, kind of going to wrap his head around these last couple of visits. It's been a busy stretch of visits for him. But early intel is the visit went well. He's been impressed with what he saw from Nebraska. He's been in Nebraska before, so, just was kind of first time getting to see the facilities, getting to sit down with the coaches, see the coaching, what the plan is for him. Something that's working in Nebraska's favor here is, Nebraska's obviously Donovan Raiola has some ties to Bishop Gorman. Him and the O-line coach at Bishop Gorman actually came up coaching together. And so they, offensive line is one of those positions where there's 3 main schools of thought in terms of how you develop and coach, and from the ground up, how you coach O-linemen. And Raiola is one of the few that teaches it the same way that Bishop Gorman does. So for Utu, there's not going to be much of a transition in terms of what he's learning at the high school level to college. You're not having to break down the technique and relearn it. It's just kind of picking up what he's already learned and continuing to develop that. So that's kind of working in Nebraska's favor, where some of the other schools in it, he may have to switch up the technique a little bit. But that's potentially working in Nebraska's favor. Again, Nebraska, like a bunch of other schools in this recruitment, wants to team up all these Bishop Gorman guys again at the next level. Right now, if you had to, if you ask me straight up kind of who they have the best chance at, I think Ale Kalani Uvalu, I think is the one they have the best chance at. Utu is going to be a long shot. Again, he's a 5-star. He's got Michigan way up there. He's got Alabama way up there. I wouldn't count on Oregon just yet either. So that one's a long shot, but Nebraska's done, the best job they can in that recruitment. And for them, the best thing with a lot of these guys that aren't super familiar with the program is time. Like, I think getting if these guys are able to kind of push their recruitment into the fall, Nebraska's able to string together some wins, you can pick up that interest, and that interest goes from, hey, I'm really interested in you, to, hey, you know what, I'm going to commit, I want to be a part of this. So for Nebraska, at least they would hope that Utu's willing to push that recruitment into the fall.
So real quick, you had Utu in Bama this weekend. You also had Dawson Merritt in Alabama this past weekend. And I know it's been that race between Nebraska and Bama for a really high-level linebacker from Kansas City.
Yeah. Everything I've heard coming out of the weekend has been pro Bama, just like it's been every time he's been to Bama. It's been every time he's gone there, kind of Bama feels like they really get some momentum. But I don't think this is done. Like, I don't think this is like again, he wants to make a decision relatively soon coming out of this official visit. But just from what I know about the kid, just from what I know about how he's approaching this recruiting process, he's back home now. I think he's going to spend this week or so just discussing both sides of this with his family. He's going to get Dylan Raiola on the phone. He's going to get players at Bama and coaches at Bama on the phone. He's going to get Nebraska's coaching staff on the phone. He's going to weigh this option out. I don't think this is a done deal necessarily. I think it's a little early to call it one way or the other. What's the best way to put it? It's a tight race right now.
Mm-hmm.
It's really, really tight. That's the best way to put it. Really tight race right now. Depending on who you ask on both sides of it, both sides feel confident, but both sides are also wary of the other side. Again, going into that visit, I thought Nebraska had built the best lead they had coming out of it. The fact that I'm hearing pro Bama, we'll see. We'll just kind of have to see what happens over this next week. I'm going to check in with him a couple of times just to see where his head's at over the course of this week, but I'd expect a decision at some point this month.
It's Tim Verghese with us here. And Tim, before we get you out, let's look ahead at the recruiting weekend. that is in front of us. Christian Jones, obviously the headliner. You mentioned Malcolm Simpson. In our last segment, you have Corey Sims, a wide receiver from St. Louis, a couple other names as well. Who are you looking at this weekend? What are some important storylines for the visit weekend?
Yeah, obviously the big ones, Christian Jones, just Nebraska's going to try and impress. Nebraska's had him on campus plenty. This is kind of their last shot in terms of just an official or like a relatively new experience to give him. This is their last shot to give him something kind of new. So curious to see how that visit goes. Malcolm Simpson, like I said, that one could move fast. This is his first visit to Nebraska. He's trying to get his recruitment wrapped up, and Nebraska's kind of fallen in love with him. Keeping an eye there. The one I would say to really keep an eye on, Aiden Manate out of Hawaii, the defensive back. We just recorded our podcast and previewed this visit weekend, and I would say he's not the highest rated defensive back that Nebraska's offered. But if you ask Evan Cooper and Tony White and Matt Rule, if there's one DB they can have this cycle, it's Aiden. They love his versatility. They can play. He can play corner. He can play safety. I talked to a scout out in California that's seen him multiple times, and is like, a lot of schools like him as safety, but I think you're underrating his ability as a cover corner. Go watch his tape from this junior year. He played St. John Bosco and Mater Dei, two of the best programs in the country, and he's locked down in coverage. He had a pick six against St. John Bosco, and then going up against 4- and 5-star receivers at Mater Dei, he's just in that living in the receiver's hit. He's excellent in coverage, and he thumps. He's not scared to hit, come down and hit. Nebraska loves him. They're battling some big schools. They're battling Tennessee. They're battling Washington. They're battling Arizona and Cal. So some big time programs in that one. But Nebraska, this is a visit that's been scheduled for a while. Nebraska would really like to just impress him. Use the poly ties they have and hopefully get him committed this weekend.
30 seconds. Michael Terry, the Lamborghini row. Did Texas just roll out the, I won't say red, but burnt orange carpet? They know how to do that, don't they?
Yeah. Oh yeah. They had a big visit weekend. So this is a big, rolling out the red carpet for everybody. But Terry was one of the most important ones they had on campus. Again, the one thing I think that's working against Texas, I've said it on here before. He grew up a Texas fan, but I'd say the one thing kind of working against Texas here is Texas wants him on the defensive side of the ball, and he preferred to play offense. Talking to some sources about it, I will say Oregon's kind of surged, so keep an eye on Oregon, Texas, and then Nebraska's probably right in there at like 2, behind, I would say 1A, 1B, Texas and Oregon right now. But this is a fluid situation. Nebraska would love to get him back on campus at least one more time. And again, this is kind of a wild card recruitment. Like Terry's a guy that has just a lot of different things going on in terms of how he's managing this recruitment, a lot of different things he's looking for. This one, I feel like the leader shifts every couple of days, every couple of weeks.
Tim, awesome. Thank you for 2 segments, not just a little overtime. Great info. Tim Verghese, Inside Nebraska, Rivals at Tim Verghese. We'll talk next time. Thank you much.
Yes, sir. Of course. See y'all.
Hail Varsity Radio is live. Now, back to Schmitty.
Schmitty's a great guy, but he don't have a brain.
And Elijah.
You want me to speak? We're not pointing you yet.
On Hail Varsity Radio.
One final time this hour, Charlie McBride coming up here in 10 minutes. We'll have a couple of your Ask Charlie questions you've submitted in the stream. Could also email chris@hailvarsity.com. Reminder to get buckled up. Coaches make substitutions during the game to get the best player on the field. Getting behind the wheel after drinking also demands a substitution. Impaired driving is deceptively dangerous. A message from the NDOT Highway Safety Office. KG is in. That's nice. Good to have him. He had some things that were going on apparently, as only KG can describe in the stream and in the tweet. So away we go. So Elijah, let's just say Elijah Herbel, 8-10 years ago, was being recruited by Texas, and they lined up, 8 to 10 Lamborghinis. Would that have wowed you? Would you have been, oh, sweet, cool, I have that car as a poster on my wall? Or,
I was a Top Gear fan growing up, if you know the British show Top Gear. James May, Richard Hammond, Jeremy Clarkson.
Heard of it.
Yes, that was one of my favorite shows from back in the day. I still love it. They're over on the Grand Tour on Amazon Prime now. Anyway, that's free advertising enough for them. Love that. The thing to me, lining up Lamborghinis outside the facility, okay, like you can rent those for a weekend. Do I get a test drive? Are you saying like, hey, like be a starter and you get one of these for free? Then I'm like, okay, now we're talking. If it's just like, hey, look at these cool cars, they're not yours, you can't touch them, but look at them as you walk into the facility. Yeah, it doesn't do it for me. Let me get out. Like, do you trust me as a recruit to get out and drive this Lamborghini? If you do that, then okay, we're talking now. We gotta get 120 in Houston like Rashee Rice.
Maybe not the best example, although he was an SMU guy.
So, from what I saw from the visit weekend, no, wouldn't necessarily impress me. But like, if you let me get behind the wheel, then we're talking.
Sure.
I've always wanted to drive one.
Supervised drive?
Unsupervised.
Oh, come on. You need your recruiting big brother to go with you.
What if,
here's the best spot.
If Sarkisian's in the car with me.
Son, go this route. You can go 0 to 60 in 2 seconds. It's probably a little slow for a Lambo.
Sark's in the car. He's like, oh, if they pull you over, they'll see me and you won't get a ticket. Like, okay.
Fine. Well played.
Now we're talking. Sark
might know the best straightaways in Austin.
Maybe.
Or maybe he just goes scent of a woman.
No, that has been like the report out of Texas, though, is they do spare no expense in their recruiting weekends, where like the Arch Manning recruiting weekend, I think like the families of the recruits ended up racking up like millions of dollars in tabs and food and drinks and whatnot. Like, it was ridiculous. So they spare no expense in their recruiting weekends. That's not surprising to me. But insuring a Lambo for a 17-year-old driver, I don't know.
Exactly. And
that might be a bridge too far.
What's the old gift bag? Does it rival the value of the Oscars gift bag? Just wondering. I don't know. Coach McBride's with us here. Coming up, Mr. Blackshirt, a Monday with Charlie. It's on the way. It's Hail Varsity, powered by Cornhead Lager.
This is Christian Peter. I'm sorry, but the stories I have about Charlie are not appropriate for the public.
The right case of the Mondays. It's Mr. Blackshirt, Charlie McBride, on Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you, it's Hour 2. It's Hail Varsity, powered by Cornhead Lager. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. It's that time. It's a Monday with Charlie, Mr. Blackshirt, Charlie McBride. We'll get Coach locked in here in a second. Lots of recruiting in Hour 1, so get caught up on all the camping that went on and good insight and observation from Tim Verghese from Inside Nebraska with Rivals.com. So we did double shot there, 2 segments with Tim, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play. On the podcast is where you can find Hail Varsity Radio. Like, subscribe. Feedback, good, bad, or ugly. We love the input for sure. YouTube channel, Hail Varsity YouTube. Like and subscribe to that. All the show archives there, video form, and for sure all the interviews, press conferences, all that great stuff covered by Hail Varsity and Hurrdat Sports. Without further ado, let's welcome in Coach McBride. Coach, the heat's going to get turned up, my friend. This week, it's almost College World Series time, which means we're talking mid to upper 90s. Is it that warm in your neck of the woods? Or are you still enjoying that cool lake weather?
Well, you can always jump in the lake. You know what I'm saying? But I always thought that the hotter it got, the more beer you sell.
That's a good point. You do sell a lot of Cornhead Lager with those higher temperatures, and it'll be suds and thirsty here starting Friday. We'll be out at Zipline, just right across from the CWS. It's going to be a good time, Coach. A lot going on. We've followed suit with spending a lot of June on recruiting in Nebraska, doing a great job of seeing all sorts of prospects, kids for 20, 26, 27, 28, but also quite a few kids that are on their board for 2025, a handful of guys. They got a commit in Pierce Mooberry out of Millard North that is super athletic at 6'4". He's played defensive end. He's played linebacker. He's played safety. And speak a little bit, if you could, about a guy that is that versatile in high school and projecting him to the next level.
Well, I tried it, and I had a really a good player. I mean, he played for the Pittsburgh Steelers eventually and was an All-American college. And we basically, I guess, had him we turned him down. Of course, I was recruiting him. I was hot.
I bet.
But and he played. He was a high school quarterback, and he ended up in college at Indiana, and he played quarterback, split end, played some defensive back corner, and played punt return and kickoff return guy. Antoine Randall L.
I was going to say, that's the guy. As soon as you said where he played quarterback, it's like, you're talking about Antoine, aren't you?
You want to hear the worst one? I was recruiting like heck, and I told the kid he was coming to Nebraska. He was all set, and when I told him we weren't going to be able to give him a scholarship, he had tears in his eyes. I mean, his name was Barry Sanders. Yeah, that big believe a little hard, doesn't it?
So I don't know how much further we want to go with this segment of heartbreak.
You could make the argument, though, Charlie, that you helped make Barry Sanders put a chip on his shoulder. Maybe Barry doesn't become Barry if he doesn't have that moment.
Barry was a very quiet kid. He didn't never said a whole lot. He was pretty quiet, but Jeff Smith was the first kid I recruited. Jeff Smith was a running back. He's a third down back in the NFL, and but they were friends. We had some relationship in Wichita, and it was Barry was a very quiet guy. You turn the film on, and he just got the ball and he ran for a touchdown and brought the ball back and ran it again and ran for a touchdown and got the ball and come back and kept doing that. But I was told we're only going to take one small running back, and we already had offered and got his. And I will say this, that I'm old enough to say it now, that kid never got to practice before he got hurt, and he was never played it down. But I think Barry might have played.
Do you ever bring that up?
Well, it was he was 165 pounds, and and it was really you have principles, and and he set things, I guess, and. So when something turns up, if you can't do it, you can't do it because of your principles that you have for that particular year. I think each year we kind of went around the table and what do you need? Some years we didn't need a tight end or a quarterback or whatever. But we always took 5 offensive linemen. We tried to really do that for sure. And, I think maybe when I got there, maybe we jacked up a little bit to 3 or 4 defensive linemen. But the linemen were really important. I mean, they were, they were really, really, really important. And because as when you throw them in with probably the best offensive line coach in the country and Milt Tennifer and Dan Young both, and they did such an unbelievable job, I thought. I mean, I don't know that there's ever been 2 guys, make chicken, out of chicken salad out of that, So it's just hard to fathom how good coaches can, develop players, I think. And that's one of the things we were able to do, especially with the walk-on program. But even so, with guys that were, I know that at first, we had a couple of linemen turned down, and I thought they were pretty good because I coached on both sides of the ball, and one of them particularly I thought was good. And we had a lie. I was talking with George Darlington. He said, "Well, we turned him down." He said, "Well, what am I going to do?" I said, "Well, tell him we're going to make a defensive lineman out of him who will just get him here." And so we told him, and he was excited about it. And he came here, and he lasted about 30 seconds and was on offense. It was Brendan Stye. And,
that's a good call.
So that's how sometimes things work. You have to sometimes in recruiting you lie to your own people a little bit. But Brendan was a guy that we had. I think it was numbers at the time, and then we had a kid drop out, so I think they were able to take him as time went on. And I had kids that Kerry Keneally started on offense. And in practice, I just walked over and grabbed him and brought him over on defense. but there's guys that change all the time. That you change them and they end up starting for you. And the question to them is a lot of times, do you want to be an offensive or defensive player? And most kids will say they don't care. Mm-hmm. A lot of times running backs aren't going to say that, and quarterbacks aren't going to say that. But they're, linemen are kind of different. They kind of just want to play football, and wherever they fit in, they want to play because it's better being a third team or a second team player. You better be a first team player. When you can play a position, you can be a starter. They'll jump on that one quick.
Charlie McBride's with us on Hail Varsity. Coach, what were the recruiting meetings like? I gotta ask. Because you just laid out some of the guys you were in on, you'd identified that were great players, but you were there. And I ask because I think of the personalities, and I think all of you did a hell of a job during your career at finding guys. I mean, I look at our dear friend, the late great Jack Pierce, how important he was. I look at Frank. I look at Coach George. Coach Ron Brown, of course, T.O., obviously, and then you, and then you mentioned Milton Dan. That's an incredible recruiting staff. Right. It was, when you look at George, he always, if you look back at the guys he's brought in, every one of them's been a player. And I remember a time when John Melton, for example, John Melton, I think, was maybe one of the best evaluators of personnel that we had. I mean, I really admired him for. He came in and one day, and we were given a kind of a principle that the final say would be the recruiting coordinator. And this particular person, he came in and said, "Well, I need some film of him," and John said, "What do you mean you need some film?" He was hot. He said, "What do you mean you need some film? He can play. Don't worry about it. I've been coaching 30 years, and he says, if you don't think I know what a player is, well, so that kind of ended there, I think. I don't know how it finally went, but I do know that Trev Albers came and played pretty good for us. That's a good story. So I've got a question here we
have a couple. We have two I want to get to.
Okay, there's one. Cliff is in Florida. Cliff has served our country in the Marine Corps, and he had heard this story, Charlie, and I got to ask it for Cliff, and you can say yay or nay or next question. But the question is this: Did you ever throw your teeth at Christian Peter for missing class?
Did I throw my teeth at him?
Yeah.
I don't know. I could have done that. That's why right now, I'm wishing I had I lost my teeth. I zigged when I should have zagged, and John Wooten was the All-American, and I was a scout team guy, a freshman, and then we were running a half-line scrimmage, and he hit me right in the mouth with a forearm. I spun out, and he come around the end, and it was a half-line scrimmage and knocked the snot out of me, and they never did find all of them. They found 2 of them, I think, and the other 2 were gone somewhere else.
So, but you went dentures, and
those are the things that happen, a little bit once in a while to you, And what happened was exactly as right now I'm having problems because I just bit down on something the other day and broke them, and so now I got to have some kind of surgery and all kinds of stuff. It's fun, though. It's worth it. It was worth it. So, the whole. My kid said, Dad, take your teeth out and show my friend. They would home and tell their mom and dad, guess what, Coach McBride, he doesn't have any teeth in front, and so on. It's kind of sad, but that having that happen to you is not a good idea. If you do get your teeth knocked out, get permanents right away.
Charlie, another Ask Charlie question.
They look bad. I'll tell you where they really look bad in my wife's beer.
Oh, no. Oh, no. Wow.
Another Ask Charlie question we got in here is from Brennan, Charlie. He's getting married on Saturday. He wants to know if you have any marriage advice. Specifically, he asked his wife to be as a Hawkeyes coat. He wonders if that affects things, but he's looking at for Charlie's wedding advice for one Brennan in the stream.
Well, I'll tell you something. We were talking about it the other day. I've been married 62 years.
All right.
And she's still hanging in there, and we haven't killed each other yet. But she's a great friend.
That's awesome. That is awesome. Marry the one you love. Marry the friend you have. That's good. And she lets you use her beer for your teeth. And I mean, it's.
Well, I stopped that stuff a long time ago,
right.
But I might have had a glass of wine, once or twice.
I like it, Coach. This was a lot of fun. We'll probably be hollering at you next Monday from the College World Series. Is that going to be okay?
It'll be great. Now, I think these guys are doing a terrific job recruiting. I think they're doing things a little bit faster ahead than we did, probably, and that to me is one of the key things. Is getting to know the kids when they're juniors and sophomores and freshmen and stuff. That's good.
Coach,
so I'm proud of them. I think they're doing great.
That is awesome. Charlie McBride with us on Monday with Charlie. It's Hail Varsity Radio. Coach, you take care. Best to you and the fam, and we'll holler next week, okay?
Okay. I'll be here, I hope.
See you, Coach.
Okay. Thanks for having me.
There he is, Mr. Blackshirt, Charlie McBride, on Monday with Charlie. That's awesome. That's a great piece of advice from Coach. Good for you, Brennan, on the nuptials coming up. Black Hills Brennan. Great folks. Got a chance to see them last year about this time. Went out to one of Junior's ball games. We were up in the Black Hills. Mr. Blackshirt, Charlie McBride. We check in with Jay Moore next on Hail Varsity.
All-State, 2-year starter, and rush in for the Big Red and NFL vet.
Who's Dudeness or Duder or, El Duderino if you're not into the whole brevity thing.
It's Blackshirt Jay Moore with Hail Varsity Radio.
Back into it, Blackshirt Hour continues. Hail Varsity Radio. We say hi to Jay Moore, Blackshirt Husker NFLer, co-host Big Red Wrap-Up, and you find him on Twitter at JMoore44. Jay Bird, a little family road trip. Did you get the truckster dusted off, and how is the road trip?
The road trip's been good. We got a minivan rental. We're locked and loaded. We made a little pit stop in Des Moines for lunch. And then, we're headed up to the Wisconsin Dells area. So everything's been good. Had a couple podcasts going, so no complaints.
You talked about the stop for lunch. Tell me, what is Jay Moore's ideal road trip snack?
Well, we stopped at a local establishment in Des Moines. I don't know if you guys have ever been there, but I highly recommend it. It's called Barntown in West Des Moines. They got a brewery, but the food's fantastic. So good beers, great food. For snacks in the car, I would say a lot of caffeine, sunflower seeds. I'm driving, so I got to stay alert. Maybe some M&Ms, some candy, but other than that, just caffeinated beverages are key right now.
And the ideal road trip podcast, obviously, Hail Varsity Radio, yeah.
Yes. Yep. A little bit of Elijah and Schmidt, a little bit of Joe Rogan. So
we'll take that company. So, how much sugar's Junior had, or is he not on this roadie?
Oh, he's on the road. He's in the back. He's on a pitch count right now with the sugar intake. We had we had to hold him off until at least past 11 o'clock because there's plenty in here, and how it goes with kids and candy. So he's definitely on the pitch count, but he'll have plenty. He'll have plenty of snacks up here, and while we're on a little vacation, and then on the road home as well.
Where are you going?
We are going to the Wisconsin Dells. It's for my wife's work. She has a little work thing up here. So we get to kind of hang out up here and at this resort that has like 6 water parks involved in it for her, all of her hard work and dedication. So we'll gladly take the offer to go have a little fun on the company's dime.
Last time we went to a water park for travel ball and then to go see my brother in Iowa, we were outnumbered by back and neck tattoos. Are you going to keep a count?
Well, I think this resort is all employees of the company, so I think they keep it pretty clean. So I think the company's going to be good. So no, yes.
Last road trip question. We'll get the ball, I promise. Was it a hard sell or easy sell on the minivan rental?
It was not a fan of it, but I tell you what, it's very efficient. You can fit a lot of crap in it, plenty of space. Not my proudest moment getting out of it, and then you look at it, but when you're driving it, it's not so bad.
That is the perfect answer to any male 35 and up that does do the minivan plunge. It's all right. I'm not knocking it. I know that 6,000 yard stare that many dudes have when looking at them. At least you get to give it back.
See, I'll never forget, middle school, family needed a new car. My dad's like, oh, yeah, we're going car shopping today. And I come home from school and he bought a minivan. I'm like, no! What have you done?
Yeah, it's tough. It's a tough scene sometimes, but I tell you what, it's very it gets the job done, So it's like I said, I'm glad to give it back at the end of this road trip.
Jay, big recruiting weekend for Nebraska, big recruiting month, and want to get your thoughts on Nebraska. Jalen Williams, super talented defensive line out of Illinois, and Nebraska had made his Final Four. It was A&M and Michigan and Tennessee, and then Nebraska is supposed to have him and the last shot, so to speak, at him on the 21st. He just got done with his visit to Michigan. He pulled the trigger on Michigan. How do you look at that? Do you look at it as damn, or do you look at it, well, okay, Nebraska's not in that conversation with the rest of those teams from a postseason and winning standpoint. A&M's not been lighting the world on fire, but Tennessee's been pretty good, and you know how good Michigan's been. Is it beer half full or beer half empty with your outlook?
Well, I think anytime you're recruiting guys that, teams that have had a lot of success lately. Obviously, the Michigans, Alabamas, Tennessees, the Ohio States, the Alabamas, everybody, those schools. When you're going after the same kids, you're in good company, and you're going after the right type of players, and the messaging and the effort to get those kids are being done the right way. And honestly, even though if you do have a kid that commits, early on, I don't think that's necessarily shutting the door. I think you still have till December, early December to still somehow change the kid's mind, or and I don't know. I'm guessing Rule and staff respects the kid's decision, but I think there'll probably still be some contact still, touching base and, hey, how you feeling? How firm's that commitment still? But I think overall, anytime you are being considered by schools that have won, obviously, national championships, been in the conversations in the playoffs, made the playoffs, won conference championships. Anytime you're in that grouping with those guys, recruiting those same type of kids, it's definitely an improvement, and it makes you feel good that things are going to change here rather quickly.
And Jay, still no official confirmation if he's going to make it to Lincoln later this month or not. It looks like he won't, but from a big picture point of view, does it rub you the wrong way whenever a kid commits somewhere and then keeps on taking official visits elsewhere? I guess we've seen it from Nebraska's point of view. We've seen other kids committed elsewhere visit Nebraska even though they're committed elsewhere. Does that rub you the wrong way, or is that just the new era of college football in your mind?
Not necessarily. I think I take it with a grain of salt, because a lot of these places you go to, and they'll kind of corner a kid and say, hey, we want you, but you got to commit right now. And when you're having a kid, maybe, I don't know if his mom and dad are there, or, they're just, you don't know this type of scenario, but if he's, put into a position where, he's kind of back to the corner, like, yeah, sure, yeah, yep, I'll commit to this school. And you kind of do it and not with a clear mind and just with a good discussion with mom and dad, that it could potentially be an issue, but I think it's also just the day and age. I mean, let's be honest. Dylan Raiola was committed to Ohio State, Georgia, and then us. So things change, and with NIL money and just the college football scene nowadays, things can change rather quickly, whether it's for the good or for the bad for Nebraska.
Jay, ESPN put out their entire ranking. This was later last week with the quarterbacks, and they put them into tiers for 2024. We touched on this a little bit earlier. You've got your known commodities, the Carson Becks, the Shedeur Sanders, the Quinn Ewers, Jalen Milroe, all those guys. Most of those guys were playoff bound, not Shedeur, but looked super impressive. Dylan Gabriel's in that setting as well, with as much time as he spent in college. But you look on down to tier 2, you've got Jalen Daniels at KU, Cam Ward at Miami, Cam Rising at Utah, and those guys are just kind of on that second tier. All the way down is this fourth tier, and it's titled The Young and the Restless. And you've got Avery Johnson, who's set to take the helmet at K-State, Jackson Arnold at OU, Nico at Tennessee. And then there's Dylan Raiola. From an expectation standpoint, where are you at? Do you expect kids of a certain ilk to come in and perform like a J.J. McCarthy did, just as a recent example, with a lot around him? Or is there still a little grace from you with how you expect the freshman to perform?
Yeah, I think for me, in this type of situation, I think I'm allowed a little more grace, even though we all know the pedigree, we all know the background, we know the training he's involved in, and we've all seen, just through a few, 20-some plays of a spring game, the throws and the ability that the kid has. But I've always said it when I chit-chat with you guys, is you just don't know until it really matters. And you get a spring game, you're playing in front of maybe, 40, 50,000. But again, it didn't really, there was no firm, hard consequences. And so until they go out there against UTEP in game one where, hey, that fumbling the football, fumbling a snap, throwing an interception, making a bad decision, checking out of something, not making the correct reads, like that stuff matters. And you don't know how the process is of going through that first game. You don't know how fast the game's going to be moving for him. Is he going to be nervous as hell? Is he going to be calm? You just don't. There's so many unknowns that I think there has to be some grace. Yeah, I think the kid can be really darn good, and I think he has the ability to make certain throws that, as a quarterback, that frankly, going back, we haven't really had a guy that has the ability to make certain throws that we've seen so far with Dylan. But again, he's 18 years old, and but I do know one thing: just being around the game as long as he had, knowing who his dad is, knowing the training he's been around, being around Patrick Mahomes, I think that's going to pay off. But again, he's still 18, and he's going to make mistakes, and he's going to have growing pains, and you're going to see certain things where you're going to start scratching your head, and again, and it's always going to happen. The backup quarterback will get brought up in a certain situation if he has a bad game in the first few games. But I think expectation level, and that's fine. I think having high expectation levels are great. Pressure is a good thing. Having high expectation levels is a good thing. But I just don't want to, put the cart, before the horse too much, and think a conference championship's going to happen because Dylan Raiola's taking the snaps as a true freshman. That's just not realistic. So I think just giving the kid some time is a very realistic way to look at it.
Blackshirt Husker NFLer Jay Moore on the road trip in the minivan. Several minivan comments in the stream. We'll get back to some more football thoughts with Jay Moore as he's on his way to Wisconsin. Thanks for tuning in. It's Hail Varsity on a Monday. We're powered by Cornhead Lager.
And now,
back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Jay Moore's with us, Hail Varsity Radio. Jay on a family road trip, so we're grabbing Jay Bird by phone at JMoore44 on Twitter. You catch him on Big Red Wrap-Up, part of our Blackshirt Hour on Mondays. So the last time Nebraska had a quarterback finish in the top 25 in total QBR was 2012. That was T-Magic. The last time a Nebraska quarterback had 10 or fewer interceptions, your man, Zach Taylor, in 2006. Wow. He was the Offensive Player of the Year in the Big 12. You guys went to the conference title game. I want to ask about Zach's demeanor. Zach was a JUCO and then earned a job over a ballyhooed freshman quarterback. That being said, how did Zach handle when things didn't go well? Because that's something that Rule talks about a lot. How do guys react when things go sideways? What's the resilience level?
I think Zach's ability to stay humble, and he never thought of himself as a big deal. Zach was a very smart quarterback. His dad was a coach, been around the game for a long time. And so obviously you can see just what he's evolved into now. But he, it was never anyone else's fault. When things didn't go, his way, he always took the blame. I think that's what good quarterbacks do. You never blame your offensive line. You never blame your tight end for dropping a ball. You never blame a wide receiver for running the wrong route. He always shouldered the blame, and he was always okay to admit that. And so I think that's one of the greatest aspects that I remember with him. But he was just calm. He just never got too worked up, never got too high, never got too low. He just kind of went about his business. And I think that's just a good quality and demeanor to have, and especially when you're playing that position with so many eyes on you in this fishbowl that we know with Nebraska football is, listen, when it's going good, everyone's gonna pat you on the back and sing your praises, and as soon as you have one bad game or make one bad throw, everyone's going to throw you underneath the bus, and the backup quarterback's going to be the most popular guy. So you just, like I said, you just got to stay even keel, enjoy the good times, and then know if there's bad things happen, you're going to have more good things. Good times are ahead. You're going to learn from your mistakes and get better. So Zach kind of embodied all those aspects, and that's what made him a good quarterback in such a short amount of time at Nebraska, and that's why he's rose so quickly to the position of being a head coach in the NFL. Is just those same qualities he had as a quarterback, he still has a head coach, and so I think that's those aspects are very key to playing quarterback not only anywhere but at Nebraska.
It's Jay Moore with us here on Hail Varsity Radio. And Jay, I can't get over this stat that the last quarterback to throw fewer than 10 interceptions at Nebraska was Zach Taylor. That's my childhood. I mean, we're talking...
He's calling you old, Jay.
I mean, we're talking almost 20 years.
That's right, I am old.
That's really almost 20 seasons and it's been over 10 interceptions. That's a wild stat to me. And that's kind of my question to you with Dylan in year one here is interceptions based on what Nebraska's experienced with turnover differential. Could that be the be-all, end-all in terms of how good his season is? We know he can throw the ball around. We know he's got the arm talent, but kind of how he adapts to the college game, the speed of the defense, is how he protects the ball. That's kind of a bit of the wild card right now. Is that how you're going to evaluate him this season, how well he takes care of the football?
I think that's the most important thing in a position that you touch the ball every play. You're the only position that does that on the football field. So yes, you have to value that. You have to take that into aspect. But also that's a responsibility you have to do as a staff and as Satterfield or Rule. You have to take care of him as well as a freshman. Don't try to put too much on his plate. Put him in good situations. Be able to run the football first and foremost. I think you have to, when you have a young quarterback, you have to establish the run. Just makes everything around you so much easier. But yeah, I think you look at it and it's going to be like, hey, Dylan, average an interception a game or whatever it is. I hope that's not the case, but yeah, I think quarterback play is always going to be is measured by how they take care of the football, and it will always be that way. But again, you have to, as a staff, put them in good situations as a young QB, establish the run, and make very I'm not saying easy calls, but develop a game plan that he just you can protect him just from getting too far over your skis. So I think all those scenarios definitely play a factor in how you value a QB's performance in year one as a true freshman.
Jay will get you out on this. Rashidi Rice of the Chiefs made his first public comments with his off the field situation this past weekend. Says he's going to focus to mature and continue to grow. What is the NFL tolerance when you look at talent and some of the special things you can do on the football field versus boneheaded decision-making from a young guy? Does your draft status keep you and give you a bit of a safety net?
Oh, without a doubt. I think the earlier you're drafted, the longer the leash you have, and then because they're invested into you, they've put money into you, and they definitely want to see some ROI. They're going to hang on to you longer, even if you don't play well early on or you make stupid decisions off the field. And if a guy made this decision or did some of these things, and he was an undrafted free agent, and maybe had only played a year or was on a practice squad, he's probably cut and looking for somewhere else to play, or applying for a job outside the NFL. It definitely has. Like I said, if you're definitely a first or second rounder, man, it buys you some time. It definitely buys you some time. Third round, yes. Even in the fourth round, it'll buy you some time to make up for injuries or mistakes you make off the field, whatever it is. But yeah, it's some of these mistakes guys make. You just scratch your head and think, what the hell they're thinking. But those mistakes are going to happen, and hopefully younger guys learn from these mistakes around them in the league, and and hopefully Rice doesn't make any more of these mistakes and continues to play and plays well in the NFL. But the longer the leash you get it's all because of where you're at and how much money they have invested in you. It's just simple as that.
Second round guy out of SMU, not a first, but a lot of upside in that Chiefs passing offense. Jay, best you and your fam. Have a great vacation, and thanks for making time today.
Yep, no problem, boys. Always make time, and have a good rest of your week.
Good to hear from Jay, and there's been some fond minivan memories. We had a van, as a kid, we had a van, but it was like one of those cool 70s vans.
Like a down by the river van?
No, it wasn't the weird, crazy, windowless, scary, stranger danger van, but it was a souped-up van because Dad played a lot of softball, and everyone else had vans. So it was all about captain's chair seating and how much room for the cooler. From a softball standpoint, that was late 70s, early 80s. I remember as a kid. And then going to school, we had a few minivans that some of the other moms drove. And, everyone's kind of re-upped the SUV for the minivan. There's still a few minivans that we did take and ride along with travel baseball, and those are cool.
See, they
were comfortable, I should say.
My first car when I was 16 was the family minivan, eventually upgraded. I think it had some giddy-up.
Cousin Nate had the Woody Panels minivan, the old Dodge. The varnish finish on the side.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
One final time, Hail Varsity, powered by Cornhead Lager, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play. Get the audio download of the podcast, the segments you want to hear, the whole show for you. Thanks to Coach McBride. Thanks to Jay Moore. Thanks to Tim Verghese from Inside Nebraska. Plenty of recruiting in Hour 1. Some thoughts on some of the ones Nebraska almost had with Coach McBride, Barry Sanders, Antoine Randall L., just to name a couple. And we got the Ask Charlie question about him throwing his teeth at Christian Peter. So check all that out. Jay in the family truckster minivan making his way up to Wisconsin. And I wonder if little man is broken into the candy dispensary and just obliterated the pitch count on sugar for a 6-year-old.
What's your favorite road trip snack?
Usually it's beef jerky.
Okay.
Beer nuts is good. Big ice cream guy. It's crazy.
On a road trip?
Well, you go in. Did I not eat ice cream on the way back from Boulder?
I think you did, actually. You had a dilly bar, I think.
Well, whatever was in the frozen section. So, that's it. I didn't go nacho cheese nuclear on the giant hot dogs we inhaled once we crossed the border into Nebraska from Boulder.
We made it back with no issues. Thank you very much.
Dude, I got to pull over. It's rumbling. You're right. Hey, 17 years ago, I was with my dear friend Mike Riley, Riles, Northwestern Nebraska. Shout out Average Joe Mike Riley. Not that one. Not that one. We always got to preface it by saying, not that one. But every Sunday, Riles would have me to his place, and I'd mooch HBO off of Riles. As rent, I would bring a steak. So we'd grill out, and then we'd watch The Sopranos. 17 years ago, are you having onion rings and playing Don't Stop Believin'?
Well,
you believe
spoilers.
that?
Spoilers.
17. I haven't gone very far. Hopefully you've watched The Sopranos by now. Have you?
No.
Ooh.
I know how it goes, though.
Well, by now, yeah. You're still wondering, based on that ending, allegedly.
We all know.
But go get some onion rings and fire up a little Journey tonight. 17 years, man. Sopranos season finale. I was on the air the following Monday just screaming about the finale. But I love the series.
Speaking of HBO, season 2 of House of the Dragon coming Sunday.
I was really late to the Game of Thrones party. COVID hooked me up. And once Amazon would have past series from HBO, that's how I got taken care of. Now I have not gone in and got HBO Max yet.
House of the Dragon, it's worth your time on Max.
Really? But isn't the brother that sold off Daenerys like the main character in it?
No. It's their ancestors.
But it's the same guy.
No.
No?
Different guy.
Okay.
Different guy.
Same actor.
No.
No?
No.
Okay.
They look similar. Well, they have long blonde, like bleach blonde hair, so they look kind of similar. But different guy. It takes place, what is it, like 400 years before the events of Game of Thrones. Worth your time to watch for sure. Slightly different style, still Game of Thronesy. I'm very much looking forward to season 2.
I'll have to check it out. I might have to just pull the trigger on HBO Max. Add another subscription cost for the month. Hey, shout out Adrian Martinez. Dude, MVP, you're awesome. Good for you. And I hope that championship comes for you with UFL, and I hope that NFL phone call comes shortly thereafter. We'll be back at you tomorrow. Michael Bruns's magnificent return. Mitch Sherman, Brandon Kenny.